Hey man, before you even think about texting her again, stop. Take a breath, because this moment, right here, is where most men lose their power without even realizing it. You see, texting her isn't just about communication, it's about energy exchange. Every word you send tells her exactly where your emotions are, how much control you have, and whether you're leading with strength or desperation. If your heart's racing, if you're typing and deleting, if you're hoping she'll see your message and finally feel what you feel, you've already lost the frame. You're not texting from peace, you're texting from longing. And women can feel that instantly. They can sense when you're trying to reconnect to relieve your anxiety instead of protecting your dignity. That's why the timing of when you text and who you are when you do matters more than the words themselves. Most men reach for their phones after silence starts to hurt. They start missing her, replaying the good moments, convincing themselves that maybe she's missing them too. But here's the brutal truth. When you reach out too soon, you confirm her assumptions. You tell her she still has emotional power over you. You teach her that your self-control was an act, not a reality. And once she sees that, she loses respect. Because women aren't attracted to men who can't sit in discomfort. They're drawn to men who can hold tension, who don't need to fix everything with a text or a call. You think sending a message will ease the pain, but it only deepens it. Because every text sent from weakness invites rejection, while every moment of restraint builds gravity. You're not losing her by being silent, you're making her feel your absence in ways words never could. Before you text her, you need to ask yourself a simple question. Why? Why are you reaching out? Is it because you genuinely have something meaningful to say, or because you want to test if she still cares? Be honest. Most of the time, it's the latter. You're not looking for conversation, you're looking for reassurance. But here's the problem. The moment you seek validation, you give away control. You put her back in the driver's seat of your emotions, and the more power you hand her, the less attraction she feels. Because women respect the man who can walk away from communication, the one who doesn't need to fill the silence. That silence, uncomfortable as it feels, is your greatest ally. It speaks louder than any message could. It says, I'm not desperate, I'm grounded. I move when I choose, not when I'm triggered. And that kind of energy makes her feel something. Curiosity, respect, even regret. Texting her isn't wrong, but timing determines everything. The right message sent from the wrong energy always backfires. Because women don't just read your words, they read your tone, your urgency, your emotional state. You can say, hey, and still communicate neediness if your intention is to seek validation. You can say nothing at all and communicate strength if your energy is calm. What most men don't realize is that silence itself is a message, one that says, I'm not waiting around, I've accepted what is. When she senses that shift, when she feels that you're not orbiting her anymore, something changes in her. Your detachment becomes magnetic. She starts to wonder why you're so quiet, what's keeping you busy, whether someone else has your attention now. And that's when the dynamic flips, when she's the one thinking, replaying, and second-guessing. You have to understand something, man. Women don't respond to logic, they respond to emotion, and nothing triggers a woman's emotions more than absence. When you stop giving her access to your attention, her mind fills the silence with stories. She starts to imagine scenarios, question her own behavior, and slowly, she starts missing what she once took for granted. But if you text her too soon, you interrupt that process. You rescue her from the very discomfort that could have made her realize your value. That's why silence is not just a strategy, it's a mirror. It forces both of you to confront what's real. You begin to see whether she truly values you, and she begins to see what life feels like without your energy in it. Before you text her again, ask yourself, do you want temporary relief or permanent respect? Because the choice between those two will define how this story ends. When you hold back from texting her, you're not ignoring her. You're protecting your masculine energy from being drained. You're allowing space for polarity to rebuild. Because women don't fall in love with constant communication. They fall in love with the feeling of missing you. They crave that emotional tension, that uncertainty, that mystery that makes them wonder if they still have access to you. The modern man ruins this dynamic by being too available, too open, too predictable. He texts her good morning, good night every day, without realizing he's killing the very spark that made her feel alive in the beginning. The silence that once made her wonder now feels like a void she needs to fill. But when you never give her the chance to feel it, she stops valuing your presence. So before you text her, ask yourself, are you trying to connect, or are you trying to comfort your own insecurity? Because women can sense the difference before they even read the message. You see, when a woman starts to pull back emotionally, it's never random. It's a subconscious test. She wants to see if your world collapses without her. If you panic, if you chase, if you fill the silence with over-explanation, she knows she's dealing with a man who needs her attention more than she needs his presence. But when you don't chase, when you let her drift without reaction, something powerful happens. Her fantasy of control fades. She starts feeling uneasy. Her mind goes to war with itself. Why hasn't he texted? Has he moved on? Was I not as special as I thought? These questions don't just cross her mind, they haunt it. Because a woman's greatest fear isn't losing a man's love, it's losing her emotional power over him. And every second you remain silent, that fear grows louder. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer safe to her ego. You've become a mystery again. And that's when attraction quietly returns. But here's the thing, most men break right before this turning point. They mistake her silence for indifference and panic. They think, she's moved on, I should text before it's too late. But that's when you lose everything you've built, because it's supposed to feel uncomfortable. That's the emotional detox happening. You're breaking a pattern of overgiving, of constantly needing to manage her perception of you. When you stop doing that, you start to reset the dynamic. You begin to teach her, through your actions, not your words, that your presence is earned, not owed. And that's when the silence starts working in your favor. It's no longer just space, it's leverage. It's her realizing that for the first time, you're not orbiting her emotions, she's orbiting yours. And that realization hits her harder than any text ever could. Before you text her again, remember this, women value what they have to earn. When you text too soon, you rob her of that process. You give her the reward without the effort, but when you wait, when you hold your ground, you create the space for her to chase clarity. That's when she begins to reflect, to remember the way you used to look at her, the calmness you carried, the certainty she once took for granted. And those memories will start to pull her back towards you emotionally. But this time, it won't be because of what you said, it'll be because of what you didn't. Silence has a way of magnifying everything real and exposing everything fake. It shows her the contrast between the stability you brought and the emotional chaos she's surrounded herself with since you left. And that comparison always ends the same way. She misses you. Texting her from silence is like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. It only works when the timing is right. If you text too soon, it fizzles out. If you wait too long out of bitterness, it burns everything down. But when you text from calm detachment, something changes. The tone of your message, your choice of words, even the rhythm of your response, all of it carries an energy she can feel. You're not asking for attention, you're simply communicating from power. You're not trying to win her back, you're reminding her what real masculine presence feels like. That's when your message doesn't sound like noise, it sounds like gravity. But here's the secret, by the time you reach that point, you may not even want to text her anymore, because you'll have discovered something much rarer, the peace that comes from no longer needing to be understood by someone who undervalued your silence. The moment she realizes you haven't texted her back, not out of spite, but out of genuine detachment, something begins to shift inside her. At first, she'll brush it off. She'll tell herself you're busy, that you're playing games, that you'll come around eventually. But as hours turn into days, her certainty starts to crumble. She opens her phone more often. She checks your messages to see when you were last online. She wonders why you haven't checked in, why your name hasn't popped up the way it used to. Her ego tries to convince her that she's still in control, but her body tells a different story. A quiet sense of unease begins to creep in. Because women are emotional creatures, and emotion doesn't obey logic. She might act confident around her friends, post pictures, even flirt a little, but when the lights go out and the world goes silent, that's when she feels the absence the most. See, silence is not empty, it's full of answers, and as she sits in that silence, it starts to echo back everything she tried to ignore. She begins to remember the way you made her feel, not through words, but through presence. The way your calm balanced her chaos, the way your patience made her feel safe, the way you didn't crumble when things got heavy. Those memories start replaying like scenes in her mind, and suddenly, all the noise in her life, the attention from others, the distractions she chased, feels hollow. You see, women don't miss you when you're around. They miss you when they realize your silence doesn't chase them. Because silence has weight, and that weight starts to settle in her chest like gravity. The very thing she thought would make her feel powerful, your absence, begins to make her feel powerless. Eventually, curiosity turns into confusion. She'll start wondering what changed. Did he lose interest? Did he meet someone else? Was I not special enough? Those thoughts don't just cross her mind, they consume it. Because a woman's ego feeds on emotional feedback, and when you stop giving her any, it starves. That's when she begins to crave the very man she once dismissed. She'll replay your last interaction, searching for clues. She'll remember the tone of your voice, the look in your eyes, the way you didn't react when she tried to push your buttons. Every unanswered question becomes an emotional itch she can't scratch, and that's when you stop being just a man in her memory. You become a mystery in her mind. The harder she tries to figure you out, the more she realizes she's the one who lost control. Her pride won't let her reach out right away, of course. She'll wait, hoping you'll break first. She'll tell herself, if he cared, he'd text. But deep down, she knows that's a lie. Because caring and chasing are not the same thing. You cared when you were patient, when you showed up, when you gave her loyalty without needing applause. But now, she's starting to realize that chasing kills attraction. The moment a man starts over-explaining or over-texting, the emotional dynamic dies. And your silence, your complete refusal to play that game, exposes her. It shows her that her emotional pull no longer works on you. That realization doesn't just bruise her ego, it terrifies her. Because a woman's greatest fear is not that you'll stop loving her, it's that you'll stop feeling anything for her. That's when she starts fighting herself. She wants to stay silent to save face, but she also wants to reach out to feel something again. That internal conflict becomes unbearable. Every time she grabs her phone to text you, pride stops her. Every time she puts it down, longing breaks her. And that cycle repeats, day after day, until the tension becomes too much to bear. And in that quiet battle between ego and emotion, she begins to realize something painful. You were never the weak one. You were the one who understood the power of restraint. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you refused to keep watering what no longer grew. Before you text her again, remember this: silence doesn't mean surrender, it means self-mastery. And the man who can master silence never loses. He simply lets time reveal the truth. Now her pride starts to fracture. The longer your silence stretches, the heavier it becomes. She'll scroll through your old texts, looking for signs she missed. She'll analyze the rhythm of your words, trying to decode whether you were slipping away long before she noticed. Every detail becomes evidence in her internal investigation, and every answer she finds points to the same conclusion. You were always steady, she was always testing. But here's the part that cuts the deepest. She realizes that you never needed to disappear to make a statement. You just stopped reacting. That simple shift, that calm refusal to engage, rewrote everything she thought she knew about you. 'Cause in her world, men always chase, men always break, men always return. But you didn't, and that breaks her reality more than any harsh words ever could. It's around this stage that she starts to question her own value. Not because you intentionally made her feel small, but because your silence forced her to confront what she brought to the table. You see, when a man detaches, he becomes a mirror, and that mirror doesn't flatter her the way your attention used to. It reflects truth. It shows her every moment she was selfish, every time she played games, every time she dismissed your effort like it was owed. The fantasy she built about herself begins to collapse under the weight of that reflection. She starts to see that her so-called independence wasn't strength, it was avoidance. And now that you're gone, that avoidance feels like emptiness. Because the man who once validated her world has stopped orbiting it, and without your energy feeding it, her emotional universe begins to feel cold, quiet, and terrifyingly hollow. Her friends might tell her, if he cared, he'd reach out, and for a while, she'll cling to that lie. But deep down, something in her knows it isn't true. Because caring doesn't mean chasing, Real care often looks like stepping back to protect your self-respect. She'll start to realize that you didn't disappear because you didn't feel. You disappeared because she stopped deserving access to those feelings. That's what eats at her. You didn't explode, you didn't beg, you didn't make a scene. You simply went quiet, and that quiet was deafening, because it meant you had finally shifted from needing her approval to needing your peace. And once a man reaches that level of emotional maturity, there's no going back. You're not playing her game anymore. You're playing life on your own terms. She'll try to fill the void with distractions, posting stories, flirting, maybe even dating someone new, but it won't hit the same, because attention from others doesn't feel like affection, it feels like noise. She'll start to notice how empty conversations sound when they're not with someone who truly saw her. She'll catch herself comparing the way others talk to the way you listened, because listening, real listening, is rare. You gave her that, without judgment or agenda. But now, that emotional safety is gone, and what replaces it is a restlessness she can't name. She'll start missing, not just you, but the version of herself she became around you. And that's when the silence becomes unbearable, not because she misses your words, but because she misses who she was when your calm grounded her chaos. And this is where most men slip, right when she starts to feel all of this. They break the silence, they text, they call, they reopen the door. But don't. Let her sit in it, let her face what she created, because that's how attraction, respect, and awareness are rebuilt, not through words, but through absence. Every second you stay silent, you're teaching her a lesson her ego refused to learn before, that real men don't chase validation. They command respect through restraint. Silence isn't passive, it's strategic. It's the emotional equivalent of letting her play chess while you're already 10 moves ahead. You're not ignoring her to win. You're staying silent because you already did. The man who can master stillness in the face of emotional chaos becomes unshakable. And once you become that man, texting her again stops being a desire. It becomes a decision made from power, not from pain. As time moves on, she begins to feel the slow, creeping dread that she might have made the biggest mistake of her life. At first, she'll try to mask it, pretending she's happy, convincing herself that she's better off, that you were too serious, too calm, too distant. But deep down, that narrative starts to crack, because every man she meets after you will carry the same fatal flaw. They're not you. They might make her laugh, they might chase her endlessly, they might say all the things she used to crave hearing from you, but they don't have your depth. They don't have your composure, they don't have your ability to see through her chaos and love her anyway. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks. It comes late at night, in silence, when she's alone and her phone stays dry. That's when it hits her. You weren't boring, you were peace. And she traded that peace for temporary excitement. Slowly, the memory of you becomes something she can't escape. Not because you're everywhere, but because she sees you in everything. Every confident man she passes, every quiet moment that reminds her of your calm, every time someone fails to understand her, she feels that pang of loss. She'll never admit it to anyone, not even her closest friends, but she knows she pushed away something real. You didn't just walk out of her life, you took her sense of emotional security with you. And now she's surrounded by people but feels utterly unseen. That's the punishment of losing a man who was truly present. She'll spend months, maybe years, realizing that what she thought was control was actually fear. Fear of surrendering to something genuine. Fear of being vulnerable with someone who could have actually stayed. Here's what's most ironic. The more you stay silent, the more she talks about you. She'll bring up your name casually in conversations, pretending she's just mentioning you, but it's a disguise. What she's really doing is trying to keep you alive in her world. Because when a woman talks about you, even indirectly, it means she hasn't fully let go. She's still emotionally entangled. Your silence became her obsession. And while you're out there rebuilding, focusing on your growth, she's mentally replaying old moments like a movie she can't stop watching. You see, when a man detaches with discipline, it doesn't make her forget him. It makes her question why he ever cared in the first place. And that question haunts her because she knows the answer might be painful. You cared because you were real, and she lost you because she wasn't ready for that kind of real. Over time, her pride begins to dissolve. That confident front she wore like armor starts to feel heavy. She'll try to convince herself that she doesn't miss you, that she's happier now, but it won't last, because the heart always remembers what the ego tries to forget. The more she resists thinking about you, the more your absence echoes in her thoughts. She'll scroll past your social media, pretending not to care, but that quick glance will stay with her all day. She'll analyze every post, every detail, every change in your tone or energy. And when she sees that you've leveled up, not just in appearance, but in energy, that's when the reality of your silence crushes her. You've moved on without needing revenge, without bitterness, without a public display of pain. That silent evolution is what destroys her ego the most. Because she realizes she didn't just lose you, she lost the chance to grow with you. And this is the most powerful part. Your silence doesn't just punish her, it transforms you. What once felt like heartbreak now feels like freedom. You begin to understand that letting her go wasn't loss, it was liberation. Because now you operate from self-respect, not from emotional dependency. You don't wait for validation. You don't overthink what she's doing or who she's with. You just exist in your own strength. That's when women, even the one who left, start to gravitate towards you again. Because masculine peace is magnetic, it's rare, it's irresistible. The man who can detach without bitterness, who can walk away with dignity, becomes a living paradox. He's desirable precisely because he doesn't desire. And that's when she finally breaks. Not when you text her, not when you chase her, but when she realizes she no longer has access to the man who once gave her everything effortlessly. That's the silent victory no one talks about, when your peace becomes louder than her absence. As the days stretch into weeks and the weeks melt into months, something inside her begins to collapse, not all at once, but piece by piece, like a structure losing its foundation. She starts to remember small things, the tone of your voice when you spoke with calm authority, the way you made decisions without needing validation, the subtle strength in how you walked away instead of arguing. Those fragments of memory become her torment. She used to think love was a game of control, that whoever cared less held the power, but now she realizes it was your restraint that defined your strength. You didn't need to prove yourself, you didn't chase clarity, you simply allowed her to make her choices. That level of emotional stability was foreign to her, and now it's haunting her, because every new man she meets brings drama, chaos, and noise, while you remain the quiet standard she can't forget. At first, she'll try to replace you, not because she wants someone else, but because she wants to stop feeling the loss. Replacement is her coping mechanism, not her solution. She'll talk to new men, maybe even date one, but there's an emptiness she can't explain. Every joke feels forced, every conversation feels shallow, and every good morning text feels transactional. The problem isn't that you were perfect, it's that you were present. You listened, you noticed things others missed. You gave her the kind of emotional attention that made her feel both safe and desired. Now, she's realizing that emotional security isn't built through attention or gifts, it's built through consistency, through presence. And the tragedy? The very man she accused of being distant was the only one who truly saw her. You see, women often confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. The man who makes her heart race might thrill her, but the man who brings her peace, that's the one she can't replace. When you walked away, you didn't just remove your body from her life, you removed the sense of grounding she never understood she needed. She might smile in photos, go on trips, post stories to look fulfilled, but none of it quiets the internal chaos, because peace is addictive. Once she's experienced it, chaos doesn't feel the same. The silent power you hold isn't in what you say or do, it's in what you don't do anymore. You don't argue, you don't prove, you don't chase. That absence of effort hits harder than any confrontation ever could, because your silence communicates what words never can. She's no longer worth your energy. Eventually, she begins to romanticize you. That's the stage where detachment turns into regret. She'll remember your flaws differently. What she once criticized now seems endearing. The calmness she mistook for indifference now feels like maturity. The discipline she thought was coldness now looks like strength, and it hurts her more than she'll ever admit, because she realizes she wasn't mature enough to appreciate you when she had the chance. Every mistake you forgave, every time you gave her the benefit of the doubt, it all starts to replay in her mind like a slow-motion reminder of what she lost. But this is the irony of human nature. People often need to lose something steady to recognize its value. The same woman who couldn't sit still with your peace will one day crave that exact stillness when chaos consumes her life again. And here's the real beauty. While she's drowning in what-ifs and hypotheticals, you've already stepped into a new version of yourself. The pain that once felt unbearable has now become your fuel. You've grown quieter, sharper, more selective. You no longer react, you observe. You no longer seek love from the outside, you radiate it from within. And that's what truly breaks her spirit, because she expected you to crumble, to beg, to spiral. But instead, you evolved. You became untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you built standards. You no longer entertain anyone who drains your energy, and that realization burns her ego. You've turned what was meant to destroy you into the very reason you became unshakable. And now she's left with the hardest truth of all. Losing you wasn't just losing a man. It was losing the mirror that reflected what she could have become if she had chosen to grow with you instead of walking away from you. At some point, when the silence becomes unbearable and her pride starts to bend under the weight of reality, she'll try to re-enter your life. Not always directly, sometimes subtly, like liking your post, replying to a story, or sending a casual "Hey, how have you been?" She'll frame it as harmless, but it's not. It's her testing the door she once slammed shut. She wants to see if you'll still open it, if you're still available, still waiting, still orbiting around her gravitational pull. But this time, something feels different to her. The tone in your responses, if you even reply, has changed. You're not cold, you're detached. You don't carry bitterness, but there's no warmth either, and that neutrality destroys her. Because in her world, indifference means she no longer has control. You're not playing hard to get. You've genuinely moved on, and that's something she doesn't know how to handle. When she senses that emotional shift, that you no longer crave her validation, she'll spiral. You've become what she secretly feared, a man at peace without her. This drives her insane, because women thrive on emotional influence. When you loved her, your energy was predictable. She could push and pull, knowing you'd respond. But now, your silence has changed the entire equation. She'll overthink everything, why you haven't reached out, why you don't watch her stories, why you seem genuinely fine. What she doesn't realize is that peace isn't indifference, it's power reclaimed. You no longer need to convince her of your worth, because you finally realize that her inability to value you had nothing to do with you. And that's when she begins to feel something unfamiliar: respect. Not because you demanded it, but because you silently became everything she thought she wanted, yet can no longer have. Eventually, her mind turns inward. She starts analyzing every part of the relationship that led to this. The moments she ignored your effort, the times she dismissed your emotions, the warnings you gave that she laughed off. At the time, it felt like freedom, doing whatever she wanted without consequence. But now, that same freedom feels empty, because she realizes that emotional freedom without emotional connection is hollow. It doesn't fulfill her, it drains her. She starts to miss the structure you brought, the boundaries you enforced, the way your presence kept her grounded. You see, women rarely admit it, but they crave men who hold them accountable, not to control them, but to guide them. And when that masculine balance is gone, their world loses stability. The man she once accused of being too strict or too serious now becomes the man she wishes she could have back, simply because he made her feel safe in ways she didn't understand before. But you don't go back. Not because of arrogance, but because of growth. The kind of pain she gave you taught you lessons that changed your DNA. You've learned that no amount of love can save someone committed to misunderstanding you. You've realized that emotional attraction means nothing without emotional maturity. And now you see relationships differently. You no longer chase chemistry, you value alignment. You no longer seek excitement, you crave peace. You no longer look for validation, you build purpose. The same silence that once felt unbearable has now become your best friend. You no longer fear losing people because you've discovered the strength that comes from losing yourself and finding your center again. And that evolution is irreversible. Once a man reaches that level of detachment, he stops fighting for love that makes him forget his worth. Meanwhile, she'll keep replaying your last moments together, the conversation where you stopped trying, the text she ignored, the final goodbye she didn't realize was the final goodbye. Every small detail becomes a ghost that visits her in moments of stillness. because now she's not haunted by you. She's haunted by who she was when she had you. The woman who was adored, prioritized, and protected, she doesn't exist anymore. The men she meets now don't treat her with that kind of reverence. They mirror her old behavior, emotionally unavailable, detached, shallow, and that's karma in its purest form. She's finally getting a taste of her own medicine. The coldness she once gave so freely now comes back to her, and it stings in a way she can't explain. But you've already made peace with the past. You no longer wish her pain, you just don't wish her back, and that indifference is what truly ends her. Because nothing destroys a woman's ego more than realizing the man she took for granted no longer cares if she ever returns. Time is the one thing she can't manipulate. Weeks turn into months, and the silence becomes unbearable. She scrolls through her old photos, the ones where she's smiling with you, trying to convince herself she doesn't miss you, but her body betrays her mind. Her chest tightens, her stomach drops. Every time she sees your face, something inside her whispers, "You were safe there." It's not the image of you that hurts her, it's the feeling your presence gave her, the feeling of being understood without explanation, of being loved without needing to perform. But that feeling is gone now, and she's the one who killed it. She wanted control, she wanted excitement, and in chasing that, she destroyed the one place where her heart was ever truly at peace. Now, every relationship that comes after you will feel like a transaction, not a connection, and she'll spend years trying to replicate what she once took for granted. It's ironic. She left because she thought she could find better, but what she didn't realize was that better isn't found in appearance, wealth, or charm. It's found in presence, patience, and peace, and those are qualities most men never master. You did. You had your flaws, of course, but you carried a sense of depth that scared her. You loved differently, not for validation, but for purpose. You didn't need her, yet you chose her. That's a power few men hold. Now, when she's with someone new, she notices what's missing. The lack of calm in his voice, the way his attention feels scattered, the absence of substance in his words, and in those quiet moments, she remembers you. Not because she wants to, but because she can't help it. You became the silent benchmark for what real masculinity feels like. And the tragedy for her is this: once a woman experiences a man of depth, every shallow encounter feels suffocating. She'll try to distract herself. Nights out with friends, new hobbies, maybe even new partners. But nothing fills the void, because distraction only amplifies emptiness. Every time she laughs, it feels a little forced. Every time she posts a story trying to look happy, there's a part of her that wonders if you're watching, and that's how you know you still live rent-free in her head. You see, silence doesn't just make her miss you, it makes her face herself. When you stop engaging, she's left alone with her thoughts, and for the first time, she has to sit in the discomfort of realizing she was the problem. That the drama wasn't love, that emotional games weren't chemistry, that the chaos she created was just her way of avoiding intimacy. You forced her to confront her own emptiness, not by arguing, but by disappearing. And that quiet consequence is more powerful than any revenge. What happens next is almost predictable. She begins to romanticize your silence. The same distance that once infuriated her now feels mysterious. She starts telling herself that maybe you were the one who got away. But it's not love she's feeling. It's nostalgia for a version of herself that only existed around you. You brought out her softness, her vulnerability, her feminine energy, all things she can't access when she's constantly in her ego. And that realization is brutal, because deep down, she knows that the best version of her lived in the reflection of your presence. You see, that's what masculine energy does to a woman. It calms her chaos, it centers her emotions, it allows her to breathe. But when she disrespected that energy, when she broke that balance, she unknowingly cut herself off from her own peace. And now, she's trapped in a cycle of self-inflicted turmoil, chasing men who only remind her of how good she had it when she was with you. And you've become untouchable. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your silence has purified your energy. You no longer chase women, you attract them. You no longer seek closure, you embody it. You've realized that the ultimate form of revenge isn't indifference, it's elevation. Your life now becomes the reminder she can't escape. Every success you achieve, every smile you wear, every moment of peace you project, It's a mirror to her mistakes. You're not trying to make her regret it. You're simply living the truth that she couldn't handle. And that's what breaks her more than anything. Not that you moved on, but that you became everything she secretly wanted you to be after she lost you. Because that's the cruel beauty of detachment. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth, the world, and especially the one who doubted you, finally sees it. There comes a strange point in time when your silence no longer just stings her pride, it starts haunting her. She begins to feel a shift, not in the outer world, but deep within her nervous system. The same man she once dismissed as too serious or too calm suddenly becomes the only kind of peace her soul craves. You occupy her thoughts in the quiet moments between distraction, while she's driving, lying in bed, scrolling through social media at 2 a.m. Her new reality feels hollow because she traded presence for attention, stability for chaos, depth for dopamine. And even though she'll never admit it, every new man she meets becomes an unintentional comparison to you. They might make her laugh, they might entertain her, but they can't reach the part of her that you touched without saying a word. And that's the tragedy she can never undo. You were her emotional safe haven, and she burned it to feel alive. You see, when a woman loses a man who truly centered her, she doesn't just lose love, she loses direction. Because men like you don't love recklessly. You love with purpose. You don't give your energy easily. When you do, it's clean, powerful, and grounding. That's why, when you pull it back, her whole emotional system destabilizes. She tries to replicate that feeling with others, but it never works, because masculine calm can't be faked. It's built through discipline, self-respect, and emotional sovereignty, things modern dating rarely rewards. So when she feels your absence, it's not about missing you specifically. It's about missing the way she felt in your presence, that feminine flow, that freedom to feel safe, to rest, to stop performing. You provided a sense of emotional gravity that she can't recreate, and it's only after losing it that she realizes how rare it was. What she doesn't realize, though, is that by walking away, she gave you the greatest gift, solitude. Because solitude, for a man who's self-aware, is transformation. It strips away neediness, purifies purpose, and forces reflection. At first, that silence feels like loss, but with time, it becomes power. You start to see how much of your peace was traded away to manage her emotions. You start to notice how much energy you gave to trying to fix something that never wanted to be healed. And when that realization hits, it's liberating. You start building differently, not for validation, but for legacy. You become the kind of man who no longer argues with chaos, because you've seen how expensive peace can be. You now guard your attention like gold, because you've learned that the man who masters his focus, masters his destiny. And that new version of you, that's the man she'll never be able to reach again. Meanwhile, she starts to crumble under the very freedom she thought she wanted. She thought walking away meant control, but all it did was expose her emotional dependence. Without your presence to mirror stability, she starts spinning in her own cycles of doubt and confusion. Her relationships become shorter, her trust weaker, her emotional highs followed by crushing lows. Because a woman who trades real connection for momentary validation doesn't just lose a man, she loses her capacity to feel secure in love again. You see, when a man walks away without bitterness, it rewires something in her mind. It makes her realize that not all men are replaceable, that some are anchors, and when that anchor leaves, no matter how far she drifts, she will always feel ungrounded. And that quiet ache of emotional instability becomes her punishment, not from you, but from her own choices. But here's the beautiful part. You didn't just lose her. You found yourself, you found that rare stillness most men never reach because they're too afraid to be alone. You started enjoying your own company, mastering your craft, and connecting with your higher calling. That's when everything changes, your posture, your tone, your energy. You walk differently, not because you're trying to prove a point, but because you finally know your worth doesn't depend on being chosen. You stop chasing and start attracting. And when she sees you again, happy, calm, grounded, it breaks her in a way no words could describe, because now she's looking at the man she always wanted, but who no longer looks back. You've become the embodiment of emotional mastery, and that's the one thing she'll never have power over again. The game ended the moment you stopped playing it. What truly destroys her isn't the fact that you moved on, it's how peacefully you did it. Because for a woman who thrives on emotional turbulence, your serenity feels like a mirror reflecting everything she tried to hide. She sees now that the chaos she once mistook for passion was just insecurity dressed as excitement. She thought she had power because she could make men react, but you took that away by refusing to participate in the emotional circus. Your silence became her worst nightmare because it forced her to sit with herself. And sitting with herself means facing the truth that her validation never equaled love, that her attention-seeking was just avoidance of emptiness, and that losing you wasn't just losing a man, it was losing a mirror that made her feel alive. She'll never say it aloud, but every time she sees your name, she feels that sting, not of rejection, but of realization. That's the thing about emotional detachment. It doesn't just protect you, it exposes her. Because when a man stops feeding a woman's ego, her real feelings surface. And suddenly she can't hide behind the facade of "I'm fine" or "he didn't matter." You've created a silence that dismantles her illusions. The longer it goes on, the heavier it becomes for her. You see, emotions need an outlet, and when she can't project them onto you anymore, they turn inward. Guilt starts creeping in. Regret starts growing roots. Her pride tries to cover it, but pride is a thin blanket for a cold heart. The more she pretends she's over it, the more she realizes she's still trapped in the emotional gravity of the man she thought she discarded. That's the curse of losing a man who had peace. He never gave her closure, only clarity, and that clarity cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Because you didn't just walk away, you evolved. You became disciplined. You started looking healthier, speaking wiser, living freer. Every picture of you radiates the very energy she once drained, and the most painful part, you didn't replace her with someone else, you replaced her with yourself. That's what truly breaks her, the fact that you found fulfillment without her. She wanted to be the reason you smiled. Now you smile for no reason at all. She wanted to be the one you called when life got heavy. Now you carry your burdens like they're feathers. That self-contentment makes her realize something brutal. That she was never your piece, she was your lesson, and you learned it so well that you'll never have to repeat it again. At first, she'll fight the feeling. She'll tell herself it's just nostalgia. She'll date new men, post new pictures, chase new highs, but none of it sticks, because you can't replace energy with attention. You can't fill depth with noise. Every man who tries to love her now feels like an imitation, a lesser version of what she once had. They say the worst pain is missing something that no longer exists, and that's exactly what she feels when she thinks of you. Not just missing you, but missing the version of herself that felt safe, valued, and seen in your presence. And deep down, she knows she'll never get that back, because it wasn't you who changed, it was her inability to appreciate you when she had the chance. And now, every good man she meets will remind her of the one she took for granted, and that's where the story ends. Not with revenge, not with hate, but with growth. Because while she's stuck in her cycle of temporary connections, you've built a kingdom of inner peace. You've learned that love isn't about possession, it's about alignment. You stopped chasing emotions that fluctuate and started investing in principles that last. You realize that real strength isn't loud, it's calm. That real attraction doesn't come from trying harder, it comes from standing still in your truth. And when she finally sees that you've built a life that thrives without her, something irreversible happens. She loses the ability to ever affect you again. That's when she truly feels the loss. Not when you left, but when she realized you were never coming back. Because the moment a man discovers peace, every woman who tried to control him loses all power. And that, my friend, is the silent victory no one can take from you.